Okay, here we are with episode 103, the Southern Air Temple. And I guess the first thing I want to say is that I really enjoy doing these episode commentaries because they allow me to watch the series again from a different perspective, focusing less on what the characters are saying and more kind of on what the animation is telling me. And it's also just interesting to see all the connections that are in the episodes already. Um, I've seen the episodes about 14 times straight through, so I feel like I know most of the connections. But what always stands out about Avatar is that you always notice something new on one of these watch throughs. And the first thing to note here is that the title screen of 103 is actually the only one in the whole series that doesn't have a white background. This one opens up on the sun rising. And then just a thing that any show always has to deal with is if it has an if it has a good opening, it always has to try and follow that up with a good episode after the opening. And many shows sort of don't get it right, but I think Avatar does. They set up something just with a little line in the opening two-parter, and that was about that Aang is the first Airbender any of them have seen in 100 years, and that sets up this episode in that Aang immediately wants to go check to see what does that have any meaning. Are his people okay? And then again, keeping the continuity, showing their Zuko's ship is smaller than the rest of them, because as we find out outside the show through the Nick website, that it was Iroh who got Zuko's crew together for him. He's such a well-respected general that some of the soldiers who served under him offered to went with him, despite the kind of dishonor to do with Zuko's banishment. That's how much Iroh is respected. And then we're introduced to Admiral Zhao, or Commander Zhao as he is here. And then throughout this episode, we see that Zuko was sort of set up as the series villain in the first two episodes. We see straight away that Zhao is as much a villain to Aang and his friends as they are to Zuko. And here's the first episode where Iroh is named, and I think his character is really good in this. As I mentioned before, his character was slightly off before that. And we are introduced to Sokka as really caring about food. And then I say this pretty much every episode, but really excellent animation here for this just the amazing scenery of the Southern Air Temple coming up. And there's the theme throughout this whole episode: the ruthlessness of the Fire Nation, the genocide of the air nomads, and how Aang is going to deal with returning to his home, basically the Southern Air Temple, and the kind of conflict between Katara and Sokka whether they should tell him or not. It's done really well throughout the episode, in that they really think about telling him time after time. And as I was saying, here it is, the gorgeous Patatola mountain range and the Southern Air Temple. I'm so happy to be home. Little do we know by the end of the episode, you won't be happy. And just that line there, the Earth Kingdom capital will be under our rule by the end of the year. That's a great kind of link to like basically the finale. Like Ozai at that war meeting plans how to finish off the air, how to finish off the Earth Kingdom. We don't know yet about the comet fully, but it's interesting that it's set up pretty much in the third episode. And we just see kind of how villainous Zhao is straight away. We thought Zuko was sort of a villain, but we see Zhao being even more mean to Zuko. And Zhao just keeps making these little snipes at him, like loyalty, honor. That line there just so villainous, just straight there. Like, oh, I can tell Zuko does not like that. And this episode makes you like Zuko a lot more because of Zhao. And then, great, furthering Sokka's character there. Simple guy, simple needs. All he needs is food, maybe do a little bit of hunting. He does not really care about scenery. And beginning to see that the war has affected the world. That his people may be gone. He hasn't fully explored the temple yet, so he still has some hope. And here's an airball. And there's an interesting thing to note about this, again from that Nick website that I mentioned before that you can't access anymore, is that Sister IO, is was actually really good at this game. And Sister IO is the character that we see in Appa's Lost Days that introduces Aang and Appa for the first time. She's the in charge of the Sky Bison at the temples, Eastern Air Temple. And a Katara there wanting to tell Aang about it, but then realizing kind of how happy playing airball made him and the thinking against it. Aang kind of boosted by playing airball with Sokka. And then Sokka right there says it. You can't protect him forever. We see the compassionate side of Katara here. They really. It also shows kind of how young they are, the tasks that they're given. They're, they don't yet know about the comments, so they're not. There's no urgency yet, but they. And here's our first proper flashback. We had a kind of dream flashback, but here's the first proper flashback. A lot of shows kind of try not to use flashbacks for some reason, and I really enjoy when shows decide to use flashbacks. And Avatar uses it a lot. I think well over 30 times throughout the series, they used flashbacks to tell the story, and it's really well done. We see how it was before and after, how thriving it was. We see baby Sky Bison there. We see the wisdom of the Airbenders here, as well as Aang is not just playful at heart. It's the Airbenders in general who are playful. So playful, in fact, that they'll launch pies at their elders, basically the leaders of the Air Nomads. And we see here just how much of a father figure that Gyatso was to him, given that the Air Nomads are raised communally. And we see the kind of naivety of Aang in that he thinks he's gonna meet a real person in there, showing again how little he knows about being the Avatar. We see this interesting design on the door, which is one of the first uses of CG in the series. The show uses it a bit throughout. Most of the time, it's not very noticeable, which is very well done. And we know that the Last Airbender, Legend of Korra, is also going to use CG in some parts, probably in the same way that Avatar: The Last Airbender did. So it's not really obtrusive into the regular traditional animation style. And here we see the sort of ambition of Commander Zhao, and the ambition because he wants to capture the Avatar. As we know from the movie, which I think the movie does this reasonably well too, is that Zhao is like the kind of like assistant of Ozai. He's like right there doing everything Ozai says. He's Ozai's like go-to guy. You sort of get the sense that he is, given that he wants to take up the opportunity, but it's probably just more for ambition's sake here. As we find out later, he becomes an admiral. And here we have the Hall of Avatar. Further explaining the Avatar cycle, and just showing how far back the Avatar has gone. Adding to the kind of mysticism, ancientness of the kind of great world building. Again, little Sokka skeptic joke there. We see Roku, and we see that the statue beside Roku is not Kyoshi, as it should be, but actually some random Earth avatar, I believe. So, is that a continuity error, or maybe they're kind of just lined up a different way? It's just interesting to note. Maybe it shows that they weren't thinking about Kyoshi when they were doing the third episode. Because as we know, the show was kind of like picked up at first for 12 episodes, and then after they judged how well it was received, to do the rest. Though actually the next episode deals with Kyoshi, so I really have no idea. And then something when the episode was airing, the kind of introduction of Momo's shadow was the kind of cliffhanger. So like, you sort of think it was like the spiked helmet of the Fire Nation. But no, it's just Momo. And we see Aang seeing the one and only thing left in the Southern Air Temple that is of the that is left of his tribe, pretty much, of his people. This one winged lemur, and Sokka just gets annihilated in this race. Never challenge an airbender to a race unless you too can airbend. Airbend. And then Zhao is very kind of arrogant here towards Zuko. He thinks like, oh, this is just a banished prince. He has no skill whatsoever, and he's sort of disrespectful towards Iroh as well. Again, that sniping I mentioned earlier. He really just gets on Zuko's nerves. And there we have what Zuko wants. We get the backstory on why he is out searching on his own. And then what Zhao was saying there was just completely gets on, just flares Zuko right up. So much so that he challenged him to an Agni Kai, which in a second, as we see, this shot here pans across to his scar. Just a great way to kind of, without showing us here in the third episode, pretty much telling us how he got the scar. That's how much Zhao disrespected him, that he will challenge him to an event that gave him that scar. And then here again showing how Avatar is nowhere near being your usual kids show. Look at all these skeletons. There's Gyatso, Aang's father figure, and also it just shows the amount of firebenders he took down with him. And here's going to be the one of the big character discussion points of this episode. Aang's character flaw being that he is really attached to anything he loves. As we see here, it's his people, more specifically Gyatso as his father figure. And this is even bigger of a character flaw given that the Avatar and Air Nomads both are not meant to have attachments really. The Guru later tells him that the Avatar can't have attachments in relation to Katara, but what he really means more is that be able to let go if the fate of the world is at stake. Not just let go anyway, because we know Roku had a wife, we know Kuruk had a wife, Umi, Ummi. But a great way of showing off this character flaw is through the Avatar state, as a kind of this emotional mechanism thing. That it's not just triggered by his life being in danger, but also by emotional stress. We see here, we see it in the desert as well. I'll come back to that. Here we have the Agni Kai, showing more the kind of Fire Nation culture of kind of what it's become since Sozin, I presume. And we see Zuko kind of disregarding his uncle's advice. He's really kind of angry at what Zhao did. And then the amazing music that accompanies this fight. Agni Kai, the track team, perfect for this. And we get our first kind of look at fire on fire action. And then, it's contrast of styles. Zhao has the more power and the more kind of anger than Zuko. But Zuko tries to face him head on with his own anger. And we know Iroh has the wisdom that is not the way. Break his root. Such a simple kind of thing to tell Zuko to win the fight. He knows Zhao is super direct. All he has to do is kind of get him off balance and he'll win. As we see right here, Zuko's kind of breakdancing maneuver here. He uses this a lot throughout the series kind of to gain the upper hand from a situation that was otherwise really bad. And they're just such simple firebending moves to get him off balance. And this is how good this show is. For the first 2 episodes we thought Zuko was the enemy. For the 3rd episode we sort of see him as a hero because of how they present Zhao. But you kind of wonder, is he going to kill him now? But he doesn't. We see there's a lot more to Zuko than meets the eye. There's some kind of good in him. And here we see Iroh just being an absolute boss. Just grabs Zhao's foot and with a flick of the wrist sends him flying back many, many meters. And that just is so great for Zuko to hear. He cares so much right now about his honor because of what Ozai has like done to him. I did Iroh's sense of humor, the tea, ginseng tea, and then back to the Aang's character flaw. As the Avatar and the Unknown, he's not meant to have attachments, but as he doesn't really get over this flaw, really. He realizes sort of most of what he needs to do to get over in 220 when he does decide to sort of let Katara go into the Avatar state. But really, I think it's Yang Chen in the finale that gets him over it. What she says, the Avatar's duty is to the world. That just defines the Avatar's role. And we see that it was Katara and Sokka pretty much making Aang part of his family that gets him out of the Avatar state. He thinks he's the last one. We know he's the last air nomad now. So it just hits him really hard, but he's their family now, so it sort of gets him over it. And knows he can depend on them throughout the journey. And then it's just interesting that they remember the kind of Sokka food little plot of the episode. And then right there, Appa, Aang, Momo, all that's left of them. Just a great kind of shot at the air temple. Sort of like more hope that they're going to return. As we know in Korra, Airbenders and all are back. And then we get this lovely music into a nighttime sky. Just it captures everything about this episode, the emotions of both Zuko and Aang's sides of the story. The kind of clouds coming in over the southern air temple, and as the episode ends, Aang looking back, knowing he'll have to do something to end this. So that's been episode 103. I think I've had a bit more insight. I probably could have talked a bit more about some stuff, but there's always this hard as the episode's going on to discuss the point while it's on screen and not kind of like leave out any notes about any scenes, like just going off on a rant about one thing through half the episode. So again, I'll work on that as I do more. 104, the Warriors of Kyoshi, I believe it's called, is next. That should be fun.